So we always say climbing's not basket weaving, right? Climbing's not bowling, right? And there's a lot of inherent risk in rock climbing. So I'm Ben Scott, I'm president of the Climber Coalition. Thanks for coming out. We really appreciate you guys' help, especially on a Sunday morning. It's super awesome.
For fixed pin, the Poudre Canyon Guidebook is the perfect guidebook for us because you have this small, very dedicated, very local community in Fort Collins that's very passionate about climbing and very passionate about climbing in the Poudre Canyon.
One of the biggest reasons of writing this guidebook is because there's almost twice as many more routes than there were in the last edition. I mean, since 2010, there were only 500 routes or boulder problems in the canyon. Now, as far as 2018, there's over 1,200 routes and boulder problems in the canyon.
Climbing guidebooks give people the chance to dream about what they're going to climb the next weekend or the next week or on the road trip when they get out of Kansas and make it to Colorado.
Every climber I know has stories of sitting on the couch or, sitting outside their tent and flipping through a guidebook and finding a climb they didn't know about and getting psyched and just wanting to explore and find it and challenge themselves. And, guidebooks will always be an integral part of climbing culture because of that.
I would spend hours laying in my bed, pouring through my copies of Boulder Climbs North and Boulder Climbs South and dreaming about the day I'd be able to climb 510 trad without being scared out of my mind and afraid of falling and breaking my ankles, right?
Guidebooks have been integral to the climbing community ever since climbing began. I mean, even back when people were sharing pieces of paper with hand-drawn topos on top of them, people collect them. It's a way for climbers to find motivation. It's a way for climbers to explore places they've never been before.
So for me, guidebooking is a verb. It's this thing that you do that's different than going climbing.
You have to really understand how to explain the layout of the area to someone that knows nothing about it. To me, it's like describing the back of my hand. But to someone that's never been to the canyon, it's like a blank canvas and you have to lead them down that trail.
When guidebook authors go out and go guidebooking, a lot of times they're not climbing. They're developing trails. They are out there with pry bars, pulling off blocks and trundling them down when nobody's around so people don't get killed by them when they are there climbing.
Come on, yeah! Oh my God. Run! Come on, you're so close. Yeah, yeah, run! Oh my God. Holy Whoa!
They're out there replacing old bolts so that climbing is safe.
Oh, I broke my foot. Oh, I broke my foot.
You can't write a guidebook and know nothing about the area. You have to actually be there.
Yeah, so I think when your average climber goes out for a day of climbing, they don't realize quite
the saws are foldable.
How much work has gone into giving them all of the tools and opportunity to actually go and climb and then go home.
So, for instance, one day we invited the CSU climbing team to come out to Sheep Mountain in conjunction with the Northern Colorado Climbers Coalition to do simple trail work at an area that is basically unknown in the greater climbing community. So this place up here is a place called Sheep Mountain. It's a climbing area that's been developed by a group of some of the older guard, like Paul Haliger and Greg Hand and a bunch of these older guys have been working up here for like 6 years. So as part of the process of creating a guidebook is making sure that everyone can safely get to all these climbing areas you're describing. There's a little bit of work we'll do on the hike up the hill, mostly like pruning things, maybe making one step or stuff like that. But most of the work we're gonna do is up at the base of the cliff, pruning bushes around, making cairns, so like everyone follows one singular path up there kind of thing. I find a big responsibility to make sure the trails are obvious and clear as much as I can, because it's kind of pointless to write a guidebook to all these cool areas and then everyone gets lost trying to find them. It's really a special place because it's almost a better version of the Palace. Like it's almost 200 routes that are like 5'9" to 5'11", and they just go on forever, like all these crazy different tiers. I take a lot of pride in writing descriptions that aren't boring. You want your buddy to get psyched to send your new project or your new boulder problem. You don't describe it as some boring little crimp thing. You describe this immaculate sequence of holds and shapes and experiences that they just can't resist not climbing.
You know, I would say that in the very best possible way, Ben Scott's a zealot, right? He lives and breathes climbing. It's his life. Climbing and his family is his life. And we're lucky to be able to capitalize on the climbing half of that.
Walk up the hill. Cool. So feel free to grab a tool that you feel like carrying as well. If you don't know how to carry it, please ask, or just, be conscious. Expensive.
So there's always the guidebook author's dilemma. It's always a double-edged sword. From one aspect, you're excited about sharing all this information and motivating another generation of climbers to enjoy the climbing area. On the other side of the coin, there's always this fear that things are gonna change, that more people, more problems. But I think in the long run, what you're really doing is building a base, a population of people that really support the climbing area, which is a big deal when you start dealing with access issues like I have with the Climber Coalition for 6 or 7 years now. Is if you don't have a group of people to fight and protect for a climbing area, no one really wants to listen. It's just you and your 5 buddies trying to protect a rock that nobody cares about kind of thing. But if you build a community of people that want to protect and preserve this climbing area that you think is so special, I think that's really a driving force. And if you're looking at the expansion of climbing with the Olympics and with all the new climbing gyms and all this influx of new climbers, that if you don't share information and be inclusive with people, it's going to be detrimental in the long run.
When I was in high school, I started climbing, and I didn't know my ass from my head. I was lucky enough to have a few adult climbing mentors who helped me go from the gym out into trad climbing. One of those mentors was a man named Paul. And when I was in college, he passed away from cancer. I went to his funeral, and his wife was standing there, and we were chatting. And I noticed that under his left arm in the casket, he had his 2 favorite climbing guidebooks, Poudre Canyon North and Poudre Canyon South. And his wife joked about, oh yeah, he said he didn't want to be buried with them because they're out of print and somebody will dig them up to get the guidebooks. And I laughed and I said, that might be true because somebody stole my copy of Poudre Canyon South just a few weeks ago. And she looks at me, she says, really? So these, they're really out of print and people would die to get one of them? And I said, yeah, people are dying to get their hands on that book. And she reached in the coffin and pulled out the copy of Poudre Canyon South that was in his casket and handed it to me. And she said, well, here, take this, it's yours. He'd want you to have it. And when I opened this book and leafed through it, I still think about, the influence that Paul had on my life and everything that he was able to give me. And this book is a connection that I have to him that will always connect the two of us. It's definitely something I try to remember when we're making guidebooks, that this is more than just a widget that we want to sell to people, right? That guidebooks become record keeping, and they become a symbol for climbers of the camaraderie and the brothership they have with their climbing partners. They become a record of their accomplishments and the time they spend in the mountains. It's about a lot more than just selling a book to people. It could be a part of their lives for years and years to come.
You never want to release a guidebook that's a letdown to people. You never want to release a guidebook that really didn't capture the entire picture. You don't want to leave anyone out. That's been a big focus or a big goal of the guidebook to me, is to include as many people that love the canyon as I possibly can, whether that's having a photograph of them, whether that's having a bio from them, whether that's just having a climb they did included in the guidebook with just their little FA name at the bottom of it, you know?
While an author may climb the routes and write the route descriptions, the book is actually produced by a huge community of climbers that have developed those routes, that have beat out the trails, that have found the crags. And it's very different than somebody who goes and just writes a nonfiction book.
The main reason you build a guidebook is so that the community can appreciate all their hard work, because it's not one person's, it's not one person's project to like bolt everything in the canyon, It's all been a group of us. It's a group of people over decades of time that have all contributed little bits to make this bigger picture kind of thing. So the whole point of a guidebook is to totally involve the community and to make it something the community can be proud of. I don't want to write another guidebook for at least 8 years.
Oh, that move is gnarly.